Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing the second generation Vacheron Constantin Overseas Chronograph, reference 49150ST. You can see this beautiful blue lacquered dial variant in stainless steel with rubber strap, and own it on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this extraordinary sports chronograph, with additional accessories included in the sale, high-resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pricing details for this overseas chronograph. Now, the second generation Vacheron Constantin Overseas was the generation that built the name of the model. Though it debuted in 1996, it came into its own in 2004 with the debut of the family you see here. But it wasn't until 2009 that it received a rubber strap, and it wasn't until 2012, comparatively late in the model's cycle, that the blue lacquered dial on my wrist finally bowed at SIHH. The watch is easy to wear. It's a friendly 45.5mm case. While that is right on the cusp of being an oversized sports watch, I generally define that as 43 or up. It wears far more compact. First, it's not excessively thick. The watch is a very manageable 12.5mm thick with a generously sloped Maltese cross motif bezel. You'll easily slide it underneath the dress cuff. There will be no problems with the jacket or the sleeve beneath. And from lug to lug, it's a very wearable 50.7mm. I often say that 50mm lug to lug is an important threshold for those of us with smaller wrists, so 14.5 centimeters to 16.5. I would even say 14 to 16.5, because you really need to keep the watch 50mm or under lug to lug to avoid too much overlap at the edge of the wrist. This watch does that, but it even goes a little bit farther ergonomically, because it has, and I'm going to show you what I mean in profile, it has lugs that actually curve downward around the wrist. So even as they project out, they've already started traveling down the periphery of your forearm, so they don't have the appearance of flaring out. It's always the awkward flare of a lug beyond the wrist that is the red line for me for fit. Here, I believe this watch could be worn comfortably on a wrist as small, yes, as 14.5 centimeters in circumference, maybe even 14 if your wrist is more oval than round. Now, the strap helps. First of all, note that it's held on by screws. This is how it should be done on an expensive and heavy sports watch that's designed to be used in an active lifestyle. Screws, please, and bars, not spring bars. This is how it should be done. Security and peace of mind. The strap is a wonderful piece. Nice, thin, pliant, handsome, perfectly keyed to the blue lacquer of the dial, and that is not easy to do with vulcanized rubber. The coloration is perfect. It matches the flare of the lug, so you get the same integrated look as with the bracelet, but it's so much more comfortable. Supple, silky, and easily bent. You'll even note that on the underside it has large striations that both evacuate material, making it soft, and act as small air pockets to draw heat, sweat, moisture, oil, and grit away from the wrist on a hot day. Now, of course, Vacheron is not pinching pennies, so we don't get a pin buckle here. We get a full deployant clasp, and even the clasp is stylized with a combination of media blasted finish and high polish, as well as flanking Maltese cross style motif. Twin deployant, so double deployant. I find that's a lot easier to work on a smaller wrist than a single fold with it's one big up and over fold that can sometimes pinch a smaller wrist, and you'll note that the profile of the chassis is actually curved to match the underside of the wrist for comfort. Twin triggers with the swing arm of the deployant actually acting as a trigger, so you have positive disengagement only. It's not friction fit, it can't pop open, and Vacheron didn't resort to a cheap clamshell. Again, the Maltese cross motif, a recurring theme for the watch and for the brand. Now let's talk a little bit about the case. You're getting a high level of finish, beautifully polished. I'm going to grab a polishing cloth real quick, but beautifully polished in profile. You can see that it is a high degree of optically smooth finish. Thing I would compare it to most would be Grand Seiko's Zaratsu optically flawless polish. This has that. It also has a nice transitional bevel, as you can see, running the entire case band as well as the lug hoods. It separates the satin finished lug hoods as well as the top of the case from the beautiful fluid flowing high gloss gleam of the flanks. But you'll also note that there is a great deal of exceptional detailing. If you get close, you'll note that there is a vertical striation or satin finish in between the flares of the bezel, and then you'll also note that the flares of the bezel themselves, the Maltese cross elements, are all of high polish. Moreover, there's a little bit of a transitional form. It's designed to give the watch a little bit more shoulder when it's on the wrist on both sides, a little bit more swell across the wrist, visual volume and presence, these two extensions, without actually making the watch larger. And they correspond perfectly to the interlocking socket where the bracelet would join the case flank and where the strap does. So there's a nice handsome symmetry about these two flares, and they also give the watch a bit more body and stance on the wrist. Now moving inboard to the dial, you can see that there is a sloped chapter ring or rayhaut acting as a scale for minutes and seconds, and I'm going to see if I can maybe get a little bit more light with a bit more aperture here. Okay, good. You can see to advantage just how glossy and gleaming that blue lacquer dial base is. It's not metallic in any way. It looks like wet paint, so rich you could plunge your finger deep into it. Now the sub-registers do have a matte finish with white on matte blue printing to allow for easy distinction of the time functions, and you'll note that the watch features a little bit of calculated asymmetry. This generation did feature that, in as much as the minutes register, a critical register for chronograph functionality, is quite a bit larger than chronograph hours at 9 o'clock and constant seconds at 6. So you have that little bit of asymmetry, but then you also have the gorgeous double-digit date at 12 o'clock that was the signature of this generation of overseas chronograph. And in many ways, the chronograph with that double-digit date was the iconic watch of this generation of Vacheron Constantin Overseas. Now the date complication is Vacheron's, and you'll note that as I cycle the quickset, it has a quickset functionality. So it's even entertaining to play with it. Now the dial is beautifully luminescent. All of the indices are applied white gold. The hands at center are white gold. There are beautiful polished chapter rings about the sub-registers themselves that add a glint and a gleam in a metallic fashion that contrasts nicely with the blue lacquer base of the dial itself. Stay tuned for the end of this video. There will be a loom shot. Both the crown with its, again, Maltese cross motif and the pushers for the chronograph are screw-down units pursuant to the watch's superb water resistance of 150 meters. This is a true full-function sports watch, especially on the rubber strap. Now inside, Vacheron Constantin calls this the 1137 caliber. It's a Frederic Piguet 1185 modified with the Vacheron date module. Unidirectional winding, 21,600 vibration per hour or 3 Hz beat rate, 40-hour power reserve. It features the quick set for the date, but not hacking seconds. But critically, it also features a vertical clutch and a column wheel. So the column wheel, the alternative to a cam or a shuttle system, is more expensive, older, and more traditional. It's also more difficult to tune, so some brands will cut corners and omit it. Here, with the Frederic Piguet base, you get that column wheel. It's crisp, you feel it, you hear it, it's a pleasure to operate. But because of the vertical clutch engagement system to which it's coupled, you can see how the chronograph seconds hand simply starts. There's no stagger or jump when it starts. There's no play in a vertical clutch. Now you can keep the chronograph running. If you just want to have permanent center seconds alongside minutes and hours, you can simply leave it running. Just ignore the sub-registers and pretend that's the seconds hand. That's because of the vertical clutch. There's no additional wear, tear, or potential damage to your movement as you might get when running a lateral clutch continuously. With a vertical clutch, again, no fear. The watch does feature a handsome case back. Now the image of the vessel, there's a little bit of mystery shrouding the name of the ship. It does have a great deal of similarity to the Italian Navy training ship Amerigo Vespucci, and I would be hard-pressed to prove otherwise. However, it's considered by many to be a general symbol of the ambition behind the watch, the guiding thought behind the watch, an adventurer's watch, a sports watch, an aquatic watch, possibly even symbolic of Francois Constantin's first quarter 19th century trip overseas to the United States and North America, which has remained an important market. So whether it is the Amerigo Vespucci or just a beautiful generic full-rigged ship, it's a gorgeous back to a gorgeous watch. And it has a purpose, as underneath this case back is a soft iron cage that acts as a magnetic shield for the movement, whereas the ISO standard for an anti-magnetic watch is 4,800 amperes per meter of resistance to magnetic flux density or magnetic flux strength. This watch is actually 25,000 ampere per meter resistant, so both water resistant, anti-magnetic. That's a lot for your money, especially for a watch that's already considered to be a discontinued modern classic. See it and find out why on our website. Vacheron Constantin, reference 49150, second generation overseas chronograph. See it and own it on the watch box.